Hi, I'm Josh Cadillac, and welcome to my podcast, Know Your Shit. I've been blessed to see great success, as well as seeing the bottom up close and personal in 2008. And if there's one lesson I've learned, is that if you want to have success and differentiate yourself from everyone else out there, you need to know your shit. As a successful real estate and crypto investor and an educator, it drives me insane that people do not immerse themselves in their craft. Everyone is so busy advertising and testing new sales techniques, they forget the most important thing, the product. Here I want to talk to the folks that got this right, the most successful people in the world in every industry. Bring them to you and find out what they learned in their business that made it great. When you're listening to my podcast, you will know for sure that the topics and experts we have on have one thing in common. They know their shit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we show you how to stop chasing paychecks, folks, and start closing customers for life, how to build a business. Today, we're joined by an incredible guest, Mr. Ken Rusk. Ken, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. Thanks for letting me join you today.
It's our pleasure, 100%. So, Ken, why don't you tell everybody here what it is you do?
So I've been accused of being a blue-collar entrepreneur. And what that means is I've built several businesses that are all in the construction fields. Started with one, grew up pretty big, and then branched off into others. And then, as you begin to do that, you begin to learn and experience a lot of things. And, I had people help me along the way. So I look back to those behind me, and I figure it's my time to help them as well. So I've written a book now and done some other educational things to try to help people to, again, shorten the learning curve to their own entrepreneurship, if that's what they want to do.
Gotcha. And what got you started doing that, man?
When I was 15, I went to a high school, and that high school shared a fence with an industrial park. And we used to cut through this fence, this hole in the fence after school, and go hang out at the carryout. But in order to do that, we had to walk through literally this industrial park. And I remember there was always these businesses, hustling and bustling, lots of energy, lots of, things like tow motors and backhoes and dump trucks rolling around, all things that young guys liked. And, I had always had odd jobs, but I wanted to get my first real full-time job. So I wanted, to buy my first used car, take my girlfriend out for pizza, go bowling with my buddies, all that kind of stuff. So I went to one of these companies. I knew someone that worked there, and I said, "So what do you guys do here?" And they said, "Well, we dig ditches. I mean, we fix old, wet, smelly basements." And I said, "I think I'm qualified to do that." So
Picking the skill set, I might be able to swing that.
Yeah, I think I can do that. So I did that for 3 years. In the summer times, I worked out in the field. In the wintertime, I worked in the office after school. And it was literally right next to my school, so it was easy to do. But I ended up learning both sides of the house, as they say. I learned the front half and the back half. And the cool thing was, when I was 18 and I was thinking, is it going to be college, and am I going to go get a job? What am I going to do? The boss came to me and said, "Hey, we're building these franchises now. We're going to start expanding our company into other regions. And do you want to help with that?" So yeah, I moved for 6 months at a time to Cincinnati and Columbus and Pittsburgh and Chicago, and got these places started, and then moved on to the next one before, getting tired of living out of a suitcase, and then moved to Toledo, Ohio in 86, started my own company with 6 people. Now we have almost 200, and it's been a hell of a ride.
I love it. Where do you think all the success came from for you?
It was early on. I mean, my father, I had 4 brothers, and we lived in a very small house in Amherst, Ohio. And he was a U.S. Marine, and he ran the place like a barracks at Paris Island. Okay. Yep. So, and he could give us as much as he could. He could give us shelter, and he could give us, obviously food and clothing and all the things that we're supposed to have. But if we really wanted something beyond that, then he said, "Hey, go find the way to make money and go make it happen." And
get it.
I'll never forget that. I mean, I remember saying when I was really young, "So you mean if I stand here for 2 hours and do this thing for you, you're going to hand me money, and then I can use that money any way I want?" I remember saying that when I was like 12 years old. And that's stuck with me, because for forever, I wanted to be in control of my own future. And the harder I worked, the more money I made. And if I could replicate that with myself and others around me, I thought we could all create a pretty cool life for ourselves. And that's what we did.
Yeah, the freedom that money gives, it gives you the opportunity to exchange your labor for a reward to be designated later, right? You can choose what you want to do with it, and that allows you the freedom to sort of escape the have tos to more of what you want to do. It's
Well, I think the important thing there, that's a great point that you make. I think the important thing is when you're working with your hands, like what I did and still do actually, you have this amazing amount of control. I mean, you control your input, you control the level of your output, you control the quality of that output, you control your day, your time, your schedule, you control, your financial gain. So for me, it was all about, I don't know that I want to get stuck on the 15th floor in some cubicle answering to the person above me and trying to lead the person below me and all that other kind of stuff. And some people find comfort and security in that, and that's fine.
yeah.
But for me, it was about getting out there and kicking ass and getting as many people on my team as I could and making it happen.
Now that makes sense. I mean, I actually just did a podcast the other day about the idea of exchanging of comfort, and how I was actually on another podcast, and one that a friend of mine does, and he has me on there on a regular guest, and he loves to take and be controversial and get all these comments. And the one person I was talking about how the single family homes that we sell in real estate are one of the most common tools people use to take and leverage in order to start their businesses. Like single family homes are responsible for funding like 90% of all the businesses in the US, people taking out equity against their homes. And so we got a comment back, well, what happens when that business fails? Then you lose your home. I'd much rather, enjoy my family, enjoy my kids, enjoy my life, and get my paycheck. And the idea was, there's going to be this self-assessment you have to do. I mean, the kind of crazy you and I both enjoy having is this, that we've looked at that risk reward allocation, and you know what? I'd rather take the risk and get the potential upside. And that's just not for everybody. And understanding that it's not wrong. It's just that people are different. People have different risk tolerances. But I think that people like you and me that have been, let's say, serial entrepreneurs, we're always looking for ways to mitigate those risks, to make them tolerable, so we can take and go ahead and do the new thing, as opposed to folks that are sitting there saying, that looks risky, I'm just not even going to go any further down that road.
Right.
And it is a bit of a self-limiting belief for a lot of people that keeps them from what they're potentially capable of.
It's really funny that you say that, because I agree with about 70% of what you just said, but there is one caveat I want to throw out there, and that is this.
Caveat away.
I teach my course and my book which is Lessons on Entrepreneurship and Vision. I teach that to kids that are 15 to 30 years of age, okay, in all walks of life. And I have to tell you one thing: if you can find someone that you can show how to design the life that they want for themselves. Mm-hmm. If they can see their future by drawing out the type of house they want to live in, the type of car that they want, type of vacations they want to take, the type of dog or a cat they want to have, their charity give back moment, their sport, their hobby, everything. Okay. If you can get someone clearly to draw that out, then all the characteristics about entrepreneurship that I talk about in the book, like persistence, resilience, faith, initiative, hope, courage, vision, generosity, all those things, I think each one of us has those characteristics potentially within all of us. Sure. And all they're looking for is a reason for them to come out.
Yeah, and a big enough reason why.
Yeah. So for the person who says, oh, you're lucky, you're one of those entrepreneur guys, I say, well, all right, here's a crayon and a piece of paper, draw entrepreneur for me. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't, because it's like a vague term. But now the characteristics that one has in order to see what they want their future to look like, that's a whole different story. So for some of those guys that rip on you for your comments and say, well, this and that, I would say to them, well, you just don't have a clear enough picture of what you want your future to look like, because the bigger that is, the bigger your risk tolerance automatically adjusts to.
Yeah, it should. It absolutely should. And, it's so many people are just looking for an excuse not to have to push themselves. So many people live their lives the way I describe it as in the passenger seat of their own life. They'd rather talk about what happened to them. They'd rather talk about making excuses and complaining. And the second you complain about something, you become a victim to that thing. Oh, the market has changed. Oh, inventory is low. Oh, me, oh, my. In our industry, timelines are still screwed up. Labor costs are through the roof. And guess what? Now they're going to take and eliminate the gas for the Sear 1 air conditioners just to make sure houses are that much more expensive to build. Like it's just one thing after another that's done. Oh, thank God. They just sent me a brand new energy efficiency guide from the state saying I have to now use these materials when I build. Going to make the house that much more expensive. And oh, by the way, my cost of capital with the interest rates everybody's complaining about is through the roof. We could look at all that.
Sure.
But this is the one thing, Ken, that has been really a blessing of doing this podcast. It's talking to guys like you and hearing what they automatically do when they hear that. Okay, how are we going to get around that? Somebody's going to get around this.
Of course.
Why can't I be the one to get around this?
I'll give you a great example of that. So, I have 200 people that are involved in knee deep in mud and dirt and concrete and jackhammers and cement mixers and all that kind of stuff. And people, they think I walk on water because I can keep these people employed and I don't have massive turnover, right? So when I hear that, there are people out there that are like, man, can't find any help. Man, nobody wants to work. And when they say I can't find any help, you know what I say back to them? You're right. You can't. Okay.
Exactly.
If you think about it, you go right down that you go to any Chick-fil-A anywhere in the country, right? And the lines out the door, they have 10 or 12 people working outside in the cold with those portable rain booth things over top of them, taking orders. They've built a culture that attracts people to want to do things. So you're right. You can't find anybody else, but people are being found. Okay. So
somebody's going to find them.
Yeah. You're being outmatched. So you just got to step up and lose that mentality and say, okay, maybe I should improve my culture so people want to hang out with me for a while. Right.
It's really commit to winning rather than just make peace with losing, because that seems to be what it really is. Like, oh, well, I can't. So I've made peace. I'm going to complain about it. I'm just not going to take the steps necessary. Whereas I think both you and I are from this perspective of somebody's going to win this. Why can't it be me? Why can't we come up with the better solution? Why can't we be the Chick-fil-A that doesn't have a problem finding people that are going to take and work out in the rain, wind, and snow to get stuff done?
Because I think people are turnable. I do. I think some people are turnable, though, because
I agree.
Again, I've stood in front of 15-year-olds that were from the inner city and they were from rough neighborhoods, and some of them did broken up families and everything else. And for the first 4 of my 8 sessions, they looked at me like, who the hell are you? And why are you standing in front of me? But then all of a sudden, that light bulb goes off and they go, wait a minute. So you're saying I can break the cycle of my family. I can break the cycle of generational dependency. Yep. You're saying I can have control over what I want to do. And then they start to listen, and then they start to draw. And by the time I'm done with those 8 sessions, they come up to me and they say, hey, man, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to come hang out with us. Nobody does. So, good on you for hanging out and making us believe that we can make this stuff happen. So if you can turn somebody like that, you can turn almost anybody. They just have to have that why. And I know you hear that all the time, the why, what's your why? But your why's it's got to be freaking detailed. It's got to be written, colored, drawn out, posted somewhere. You got to see this shit so you know exactly what you're chasing, and allow the power of your mind and that attraction that your mind automatically does, and the involuntary movements that it makes your body do to go get those things. You got to allow that to happen, because it doesn't cost you anything. There's no training. You just do it, and the results will be there.
It's an idea that I'm a big believer in, is this idea that you are the CEO of your own life.
For sure.
You're responsible to manage the staff. And in your life, you are both the CEO and the staff. You lay out the things that you want you to do, and you got to figure out how to get you to do them. And what you're talking about, really, when you're talking about these things to motivate you, is really being a good CEO to yourself and saying, how can I keep the staff on track? How can I keep them motivated? Because the fact of the matter is, our lives wind up being these huge collection of habits that we build and fall into, right? We either take and intentionally build them, or we fall into them because we find ourselves repeating the same behavior that has kept us where we are. And so taking and properly, as you said, motivating the staff, putting it out there in a clear, tangible way, so that the staff, so that you, when you get down, because you're gonna, You can look at this and say, that's what I'm going for. That's why I'm going to take and go a little bit further, a little bit more. It's such an important piece.
I think you're right on with that. The analogy I use is that, these emotions that pop in and out of your head, they're like ghosts. I mean, they're in there, they're coming and going, and they're haunting you one way or another. And so in the way I write about it in Blue Collar Cash, I write about how those emotions are obviously a choice, but they're like people trying to get in and out of a really hot nightclub, and there's this doorman who has to regulate who comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
So the staff is your emotions. The staff is your ability to say yes or no, because if you think something can happen or you think it can't happen, guess what? Either way, you're right.
Yep.
And so I think it's really important. I love the way you just phrased that. You are the CEO of your own staff. When I think of my own staff, it would be all those things that say, yes, I can, or yes, I can't.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the real wild card is when you really start to think about that, how good of a CEO are you to yourself? In other words, do you treat yourself differently than you treat your employees? Especially if you're a good boss to your employees. A lot of us, and especially the entrepreneurs, we tend to be really hard on ourselves. I mean, I'm sure with a dad that's a former Marine, my father was Army, and the first boss that he got me when I was 9 years old was a former Marine that was his nastiest foreman from his previous industrial operation. He's like, hey, look, I'm hiring you out of retirement to go follow my son around and make sure he doesn't screw up. So this guy,
that's fantastic.
Wide open door to ride me like a rented mule. And like my father was like, if say the guy's name was Sam, if Sam was complaining about me, Sam was right and I was dead.
Always.
That's just how, like, there was never, the teacher. No. If the teacher said it, I was dead. The teacher was always right. Right.
Yeah.
And so this is how we grow up. And so the natural tendency, we've learned that the way to get more out of ourselves is to be hard on ourselves. And there's a place for that. And there's a good place for that. There's a good place to push, like you're saying, like we need that fuel for the fire. I like to say it this way. Sometimes it gets really, really hard. And the tendency is to sit there and say, Coach, take me out. I've had enough. You need to have those things that are big enough where you can look all bruised up, battered and bloody, look the coach in the eye and say, you know what, Coach? Put me back in. I got a couple more plays left in me. You got to find those things that are big enough for you to take and dig it out, because that's properly managing the staff. That's finding those things that are big enough, those causes, those ideas that are big enough to get you back in the fight, because you can't win the fight you're not in.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think you need to connect those with the reward for that. So, if you're going to get rid of frustration and you're going to go after, let's say, curiosity, if you're going to get rid of anger and put joy in there, or if you're going to get rid of, someone who's the emotion of impatience, and you want to put anticipation in there instead, there's got to be a reason that you're doing all that. So when I'm hard on myself, it's because I have big ass goals. It's not like I just want to be hard on myself. Okay. And the other thing is, I think there comes a time when you have to recognize that 70 hours a week is not some kind of trophy. Okay. As an owner, as a manager, as a whatever, the ego in all of us has to let go a little bit to say, okay, I'm going to surround myself with some intrapreneurial thinkers, the ones that maybe don't want all the risk, but they still want to run their departments like they own it. And then you share in the rewards of that growth with them. I think that's the real key to growing companies, is to surround yourself with people who are 80% of you, but they don't want the risk of buying, 40 dump trucks like I did, or going through, the workers' comp and making payroll and all that other kind of stuff, signing on leases and everything. They maybe don't want that risk, but they sure as hell would love to run their own department the way they see fit. And they're probably good enough to do that if you just let them. So yeah, I think that's a big thing, because we all want to go home at night and say, oh, honey, I did this and I fixed that and I changed this and I screamed about that and I altered this and I built that. I'm not so sure that's the way to do it. I mean, I look to me, this is controversial, but I look to me to say, how can I make myself less and less relevant to the daily mechanics of this company?
Sure.
And remove myself to staring down back at it from the outside and saying, what's the vision I have for this place and how do I want to grow it? So
Absolutely.
I
No,
think
no, to
people
take
get
and pull
they
yourself out
get
of
stuck there.
operations. Yeah, yeah. Pull
Yeah,
yourself out of operations so that you can take and focus on what you're really good, which is to take and build it bigger and better, and what the next thing is. I think that's huge. I think there's a piece actually that I like to touch on myself when I think about it, which is this idea of defining the win on the way in, because one of the problems with being very hard on yourself and not being what I say be is being a bad boss to yourself is people tell themselves in my industry, especially real estate, go to work and get stuff done. So they go to work, they work all day, and then they're on the drive home. Well, did you do this? Well, shoot, I didn't do that. Did you do this? Well, I didn't do that. But they did a whole bunch of stuff, but they never told themselves, like on the way in before they started, what they
yeah,
needed to get done to have the day be a win.
right.
So for me, all of my systems, everything I do and everything I teach is built around aggregating my work in places where it's clear and obvious to me what's got to get done today. If I get that done, I get to go home and spend my time in that space where I'm at my best. I don't have to, I feel no guilt for work because I did everything I was supposed to do. And
Sure.
now I can focus on, and I'm sure you know it too, Ken, right? When the noise turns down from the stuff that distracts us and we can focus, that's when the big stuff really can come together. You know, those ideas can start to coalesce into some great things. And so I need to take and manage, just like I would. You got 40 dump trucks. You change the oil on the dump trucks, right? You
Yeah.
take and make sure that all the grease is where it needs to be on the fifth wheel. So, you know, like you make sure all that stuff's done, because otherwise, if you don't take care of the equipment can't take care of you. And it's so I try to set myself up to maintain the morale of my staff so that I know what a good day looks like before I have to go do it. So when I turn it in, I can chalk the W up in the book and say more days like that. That's what we're looking for here.
Yeah, and basically what you're doing is you're kind of beginning with the end in mind. And I think that's the difference. I mean, you're either running your company or your company's running you, right?
Totally.
So I've heard people say, well, I feel like I'm living just to work. Well, no, you're supposed to work so that you can live. That's what it's all about. So, life either happens to you or you happen to life. I know that those are all, small little hyperboles or whatever they call
Cliches,
them,
yeah.
but cliches. But if you stop and think about it just for a second, those things are all absolutely true. So, there are people again that react to the stimulus of the day, good or bad. And there's other people who create the stimulus of the day, good or bad. And so I just think we have to really stop and say to ourselves, okay, are we going to go through this reacting to everything, or are we going to proact to everything? And that's what you're saying is you're beginning with what a good day would look like at the end of that day, right here and now. And so when you get that, you've accomplished stuff that you can feel good about. You can
Yeah.
go home and say, okay, let's figure out what the next day is going to look like. I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just really trying to be clean. And it is the thing, Ken. It's what you would do for an employee if you're
Mm-hmm.
really trying to help them to get the most out of ourselves. And that's when I talk about being a good boss. Like, do I treat me like I would be trying to treat an employee that I'm trying to really help maximize what they do? So it's a thing. Let me ask you this though, Ken, because we can obviously get stuck on this topic.
Sure, absolutely we could.
What do you like best about what you do, bud?
Oh, there's no doubt it's watching others succeed. I've said 100 times, I can't get what I want, nor can my company get what it wants or needs until all of you get what you want first. And it's absolutely true because, most businesses are linear objects. There's an input level, there's work, and then there's an output. And guess what? As an owner, boss, manager, you're always on the output side. Okay. You're the last one to think about the financial rewards you get from that. So I absolutely believe that the better the team is, the better the people are, the more they're winning for themselves. And this is somewhat controversial too, because I like selfish people. And I don't mean selfish at the detriment of others. I mean people who are focused on their futures. Okay. They're focused on what's in it for them to work here.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, can they create a result and then benefit personally from that? Because the more people win for themselves, the more the company is going to win overall. So I want them working for themselves first and me second. And so when that happens, I get to watch these things happen. I get to watch families being created, houses being bought, cars being bought, vacations being taken, memories being built, okay, and made. I get to watch all the development of the people that work in and around me from this entrepreneurial standpoint. And that's really cool. And we actually document this stuff. I mean, we have this huge black glass board. It's like 8x8. It's out in the hallway. And people literally take, those neon colored markers that you see at Mexican restaurants about margarita of the day special, right?
Mm-hmm.
We actually write their goals in crystal clear fashion. Start date, end date, all the steps to getting to it, the progress along the way. They sign it, we sign it. And that's shared amongst everybody. So everyone can high five these people in the hallway when they see them getting close to the completion of their goals. And, for me to watch the people around me really develop, and I know you hear that a lot, but that's what really gets me out of bed is to see all these mini wins happening around me and knowing that the company's going to win and I'm going to win as a result of all that.
It's good stuff, man. Ken, what do you think makes you good at it?
They believe me. And that's just it. You have to, I mean, you can say something, fine. But if you're doing something, because I put my own goals on the same board. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they're watching me. I had a 2-year goal to write my first book and it became a bestseller last fall. Wow.
Congrats, brother.
I mean, it was a shock to me. I didn't think the book would go 10 feet, much less the 10 miles that it's gone. Right. But again, very grateful for that. And they get to see that. Now, they know that next year I'm going to go to Scotland to play golf for the 4th time. And I'm going to go to a different place called the Highlands, and they know that's where I'm going, and I'm going to go play golf there. So
nice.
These are things that, I put my money and my actions where my mouth is, right? I don't just cheerlead. I'm in it with them. Yeah. And I think that's why I'm good at it, because they see that it works for me in a major way, and they see it working for them and each other. And they're like, yeah, you know what? I think I can make a life for myself with and through this place.
Gotcha. So, Ken, looking at the market today, I mean, we're looking at the world today, the market today. Where do you think the opportunities are?
It would be easy for me to say things like new energy and, new ways to find old energy and anything that does something with your hands, because, the scarcity of people that are willing to do that. But I can tell you that, so ditch digging was number 99 out of a list of 100 things that I wanted to do. Okay. Yep. I wanted to be a race car driver. Richard Petty. That's who I wanted to be. But I can tell you that the more these things started to show themselves, the more I realized that, is it what I do every day for 8 hours that matters as much as how my other 16 hours are developing, like what my life is looking at? So I found a way to make ditch digging cool. I found a way to make the culture fun. I found a way to say, okay, we're going to be the greatest, coolest ditch diggers that ever walked the planet, right? We're going to have fun doing it. We're all going to benefit. We're going to make it. We're going to win for ourselves. So I would say this: look around your neighborhood, look around your town, find what everybody else isn't willing to do, because chances are that service is in demand, and yet nobody's doing it. And where supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes. So
that's where the opportunity lies.
Yeah. And again, you can make almost anything cool if you just focus on the culture that you're building around it. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And if your life is improving on a daily basis because of that activity, so what? I mean, your goal is to win in life, not to win in work.
That's right. Work is a part of life. It's not life.
Yeah.
And keeping that in balance. Although I think culture gets that the opposite way right now. Work is something that they do to fund life, as opposed to being a place where you can express who you are and what you're about. And I think it's a balance of both. A good life should have you expressing yourself, not just in your leisure, but in the work and the quality of work that you do.
Sure.
It should make your statement of who you are. It's such an important idea that I think people neglect to their detriment today, that, leaving a desk clean because your desk is always clean, because that's just the way you leave your desk, there's something to be said for that. My father was with the big fan. We used to tell me this, the floor sweeper. I don't care what you grow up to be. If you're gonna be a floor sweeper, you be the best damn floor sweeper there is. The way you leave that floor says everything anybody needs to know about your character. What kind of
Sure,
person?
absolutely, 100% right. I mean, if you think about it, you study wars, and there's such dichotomy in leaders. There are leaders that could send people on that hill knowing there's a lot of danger out in front of them, but those leaders love that guy. I mean, they loved him because
Oh,
he
yeah.
was in it with them, and the culture was good, and they would fight like hell to make that happen. And then there's the opposite of that, where they're like, man, this guy's hiding behind he's hiding
Yeah,
behind a tree and sending me up there. So I think no matter how challenging the work is, you can find a way to make it cool. I mean, look at what we're doing.
absolutely.
So I think that's the
Absolutely.
kind of the secret there.
You're talking to a guy who just finished reading another biography of Chesty Puller. So I know exactly what you're
There you
talking
go.
about.
There you
I
go.
mean, talk about a guy that used to drill his people harder than anybody. But I mean, the one section of the book was just so good. They're talking about that he took these guys on a 30-mile march, and like none of the troops are complaining because while they're complaining about the march, they're watching Chesty walk up and back, up and down the formation. They said the guy must have marched 45 miles while they marched 30, just
Yeah.
checking and making sure everything was okay. I mean, the other story that I thought was just hilarious and so his bravado. He used to light his pipe where the enemy could see it, so the machine guns and the snipers would target him, so his guys could see where they are and take out the machine gun nest. I'm like, this
Who
is
does that?
who does that? Who
Yeah,
does
right.
that? The most decorated Marine in history. The guy that I mean, I don't know how much you know, but I mean, he was in Guadalcanal, and one of the guys that was stuck there that the Navy left since from August to December. The average Marine lost like 40 pounds. That's how bad it was. They had like one undersized company. They took out an entire Japanese division. I mean, just crazy. And then he also wound up at the Chosin Reservoir, completely surrounded by the Chinese, and had the great escape, if you will, from there. And talk about perspective. They said to him, Chesty, they're in front of us, they're behind us, and they flanked us on both sides. His response, they can't get away from us now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, just what good leadership looks like. I mean, these were guys who were freezing to death, whose lives were on the line. And his men performed for him absolute miracles getting out of that because he just led so well. So I love that. Yeah, man, you're hitting close to home with this stuff.
I hope there's a documentary on him, because I would love to see it. I mean, there should be if there isn't. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, there's not that. The Flying Tigers is another group of misfits that came together to just be incredible. Actually, my father used to tell us, or my father got sent to military school, and there was this simulator they had, this really old school simulator for taking the flight exam, and like nobody could pass it. It was like super difficult to get done. So one of these guys visiting was one of the Flying Tigers, the guys that were in China that were fighting to take in. This guy bent over and took the test between his legs upside down and passed it like easily. And I mean, these guys were just insanely good at what they did. And the planes were complete crap, falling apart, and still, these incredible records. I wish people, and this is the thing, Ken, I wish people talked more about these folks that did the impossible, that did that, instead of looking for things to complain about and what's wrong with, let's take and nitpick everything that's wrong in America. Let's take a look at the folks that did something really heroic and marvelous and excellent and praiseworthy, and talk about those things. Our young people need to hear that, need to know that greatness is something that existed, and that
Sure.
it still exists, and it's something that's celebrated, right?
And it's what built the fabrics of what, or the foundations of what our whole country operates on. I mean, here's the thing. So I, like you, didn't have a cell phone until I was probably 24 or 5. You know what I mean? I grew up not having anything to think about as far as he's more handsome than I, he's taller than I, he's got better hair than I, his
Yep.
physique is better than mine. Like I'm talking about, Instagram and some of these other things
Yep.
where all you do is compare yourself to the next person. that is such a dangerous thing for our young people to be seeing
Yep.
At a young age when they're trying to figure out who they are. And all of a sudden, I mean, you're building your own self-esteem, you're building your own awareness, you're building who you are as a person, whether that's your humor, your humility, your compassion, your strength, your talents. You're building all of that from the time you're 0 to the time you're 13, 14. Can we leave them alone while they're doing that? Okay.
Yeah, just give them a shot.
Just give them a shot, and then maybe give them that that stuff that they can find when they're 15, 16, 17 years old, maybe when they can more handle it. Because right off the bat, they're all thinking, well, I got to be like that person or that guy or that gal. That's just no way to start. So yeah, I agree with you. And by the way, if they weren't doing all that stuff, they'd look around and they go, you know what, it's pretty cool to live in a free world where I can go play Frisbee. I can go get an ice cream cone. I can go get a part-time job. I can, do whatever I want to do. And not to soapbox you on that one, but yeah, I wish I could turn back the clock on some of that stuff.
You are preaching to the choir, brother. I was actually on a podcast. I very seldom do a solo podcast, but I did one yesterday. Just talking about some of the stuff that I learned from some of the entrepreneurs like yourself that I've had on the show. And the idea that a lot of the ideas that people have in their heads are things that they picked up as a kid that they just hung on to, like this is how life is. This is what I like. This is I don't like to eat that. Like we get all this stuff. And at what point in your life are you less prepared to take and make decisions that are literally going to have the greatest potential time span to impact your life than when you have the smallest frame of reference on which to base those opinions?
Exactly.
And yet we do this. And this is such an important life skill that we're kind of talking about, which is this ability to pop yourself out of yourself, kind of look down on yourself and say, all right, what the hell am I working with here? Like, what kind of a guy is this? Yeah. And how do I get out of this guy what he's capable of doing? I mean, oh gosh, I got this Josh guy. Oh, what a problem child he is. How are we going to make him work? But I think there's a piece of this too, because I tell my agents when I'm training, in fact, I just mentioned it today earlier in a class when I was speaking today. I said to them, you have to commit. If you're going to be in business, if you're going to take and do something well, and this is for business people, but it really is for everybody, you have to commit to pay the most expensive bill there is. I call it the most expensive bill in real estate, but it's really the most expensive bill in life. You've got to commit to pay attention. You got to pay attention. So why is it the way that it is? How did it get to be that way? Why does the roller coaster have 4 tracks instead of 2? And I want to know how it works. And you pointed out my trains earlier on when we were talking before we started. My father was born in 1930. I did model trains because that was a hobby he had. It required me to do carpentry work to build the tables. Sure it required me to do the electrical work. Detailed, get it level, get it clean, work clean. And so all of these were skills that from just even the hobbies that I chose set me up that when I went to get my master electrical license, I knew how electricity worked. When I got my general contractor's license, I knew how to build stuff. I've been doing it for years. I still got calluses on my hand. No matter what I seem to do, they won't go away.
Well, if you think about it, so when I was younger, I told you we grew up in Amherst, Ohio, which is near Lake Erie. And my father in the springtime, he would buy a small old wooden boat, an old Lyman, if you remember Lyman's from Sandusky, Ohio. And we would haul that over to the house and it'd be on a cradle. And the 5 of us would be sanding and painting and polishing and varnishing and doing all these things, fixing the engine and doing all that. And then we would take that boat and we would take it out to the lake and we'd ride around on it and then we'd sell it or whatever and do it again. So I think to myself, that was a used boat, like a hand-me-down of somebody's, right? If I had all these social medias, I'd be looking at this going, Dad, why don't we have this brand new shiny boat like everybody else? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, instead of being able to enjoy it, you're wondering why it's not something better.
It would have been hard to appreciate, redoing something from scrap and making it into something beautiful, not new, but nice and fun.
And new to you.
Yeah. So I learned a lot about that stuff for doing all those things back then. And so, I mean, we cut our own grass. We did all our own mulching and tree planting and all that kind of stuff. You don't see kids doing that stuff anymore. And it drives me crazy because those are such simple life skills that you take with you forever. And yeah, like I said, I'd love to turn the clock back on a lot of things.
Yeah, no, I hear that, brother. So, what do you think you're most proud of in business that you've accomplished?
Well, I would say that enough people thought that my coaching skills were that good that they asked me to take this information beyond the four walls of my company and put it into my first book. And I never woke up and said, I'm going to be an author. It just kind of happened. My
Yeah.
daughter got really sick and like scary sick. And when she
Ooh.
was 12, and for the next 5 years, my wife and I sat in waiting rooms and ultrasound rooms and oncology offices and all that kind of stuff. And you have a lot to think about, right? So I started thinking about what would I teach her about what's important in life? And the words comfort, peace, and freedom just kept coming back to me. I couldn't get rid of these three words. So I knew that that was kind of a triangular connection. And so I started writing my thoughts down on that so I could teach her, well, what should she be chasing? If she was going to chase something in life, what would it be? And
Mhm.
everyone has their own version of that. You know what I'm saying? They have their own version of what their personal nirvana could look like. We're
Mhm.
not all going to chase rap star careers and 15 cars and mansions and yachts and all that other stuff, right?
Mhm.
So that kind of kept going into stories of my friends who were successful, who came from enormous deficits. I mean, terrible deficits to become successful people. And the book went nuts. I mean, it ended up being a bestseller, like I said before. And so knowing the life skills that I had worked on in coaching people over the last 30 years was popular enough that people around the nation, you know, gave it their rubber stamp of, yeah, I love this. I think that was probably one of my coolest accomplishments.
No, it makes sense considering how much from talking with you, you value helping other people. I'm a big fan as well. I think that's a one of the best things a life can do is make other people's lives better.
Sure.
You know, if people's lives are better for having come in contact with me, I feel that's a big thing, and it's one of the big, you know, I'm a big believer in starting from the end and working backwards, right? I
Oh,
believe
yeah.
you figure out your standards, you figure out what you want them to be able to say about the guy that they're putting in the ground. What do they say at your eulogy? How do I have to live today to be the guy they're talking about?
Very well put.
Yeah. And so for me, you know, like the idea of being as generous with my time as I can be and things like this are all standards that I try to put in to how I live my life so that my staff, the guy who's got to actually do this all day, knows what he's supposed to do. When the opportunity, you get to the crossroads, what's the standards? Oh, it's a one way only now because we know this is what we're here to do, right? This is the
Yep.
product that we put out. But yeah, man, that's awesome. What's the title of your book again for everybody that's listening?
It's called Blue Collar Cash.
Blue Collar
And
Cash.
you can get it. You can get it. I mean, you go to kenrusk.com. You can find the book and the course there as well. I tell you what I did. You know, you see these business courses out there, self-improvement courses that are $2,000-$3,000.
I was just
Now,
about to ask you. Yep.
yeah, I built one that it's 8 sessions. Each session is 45 minutes long. You can do it in a weekend or 8 days or 8 weeks, whatever your pace is. But it's $129. You get a free $25 book with it, and I get to donate money to charity if you do that. So um, it's a pretty cool thing. It's for the cost of dinner and a movie. You can use things that are so simple. People go, why haven't I ever heard this before? This is so simple,
Yep.
but yet they don't do them. So you can plug yourself into a better life, like, you know, tomorrow, not next week, not next month, and
Yeah.
start improving how you see your future. So
Love it. So let me ask you this. Let's give folks a little taste, if you don't mind. What one piece of advice you may never talk to any of these people that are here again? What one piece of advice do you think you could give right now that you think somebody might need to hear?
this is perfect. So the university, Virginia Tech did a study. Okay. They put 100 people in a room. They said, raise your hand if you have really crystal clear goals. Only 20 people raised their hand. Rest of them had some hopes, some dreams, some wishes, but they weren't clear. Move those people out, 20 people left. Okay. Now, of the 20 people, how many of you have those goals written down somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
4 people said they had them written down and could go retrieve them if they were asked to. Okay. Take the 16 away. Of the 4 of you, how many of you have those goals written down and review them or have them hanging on the wall where you see them every day? 1 person. Okay. So they followed those people for 10 years and they found out that the person that wrote their goals down, drew pictures of them, put it on the wall, made 9 times more money than the other people in that study.
Yep.
Now, is it all about the money? No, it's about chasing the things you want for your life. And is it the things that make you happy? No, but it's the memories you create from the things that you get that you've been chasing. And so, you know, it's not the car, it's the fun you have with the car. It's not the golf clubs, it's where you play golf with your buddies.
Absolutely.
It's, you know, it's all those things you do with your family, whatever. That's what's important. So if I gave one piece of advice, it would be sit down, get your stuff drawn out, stick it on the wall, and then let it happen for you.
All right. Opinion time. As if none of this was other stuff was opinion.
Right.
What one book or movie would you recommend to our listeners?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Heard that one many times on here before. Read it as a kid, actually.
It's still a bestseller, even though it's what, 30 years old, maybe more than that. I don't know.
It's probably more than that. I know how old I am, and it wasn't brand new when I read it. So, Ken, I can tell you're a hungry guy. You're always doing stuff. What's next for you? What's the next thing, the next idea that's germinating? What's coming up?
Well, we're building a new headquarters for our company, which will start in March. So that's a good thing. My daughter and son-in-law are designing the building, so I get to watch them design it. They're architects.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
That's gonna be very rewarding.
I'm writing another book on how bosses, owners, managers can create the type of culture that I talk about in my first book, Blue Collar Cash. And we got a speaking series called 2 Crappy Chairs, where we go around and tell people while we're sitting in 2 crappy old recliners, which is the opposite of what you'd see on like Oprah or something like that.
Yeah.
We're talking to people about how to better their lives and how to get things done, how to become 2-dayers versus some dayers, and how to create culture. So lots of good stuff going on.
I love that, man. All right. I got 2 questions left for you.
Go.
1, what do you do to unwind?
I play golf or I sit on my boat. Or, I mean, both of those with my family whenever possible. Yeah.
Gotcha. Good stuff. The boat thing, I can definitely see the boat thing. The golf, if it's putt-putt golf, you got me. The other kind of golf, you know, I just know.
It's hard. It is definitely hard.
That it is. Ken, where can folks find you? Last question.
Please go to kenrusk.com. You can find all the stuff that we're talking about there, the book, the course, and everything else, my blog. But you can also find me at Ken Rusk Official, which is on my socials. And you'll see what we're up to there as well.
All right, Ken, thank you so much for your time. I know that the people that listened are going to be blessed and enriched from your wisdom, sir. Thank you so much. And for those listening, thanks for joining us here on the Know Your Shit podcast. Reminding you, folks, pursue excellence. A life short of excellence is just a waste. Figure out what you can do and how you can do it best, and go after it and chase it with all the relentlessness you have. Best kind of life is on the other side of that, guys. Till next time.